You held on tight to me, 'cause nothing's as it seems. It's spinning out of control. Didn't they tell us don't rush into things? Didn't you flash your green eyes at me? Haven't you heard what becomes of curious minds? Ooh, didn't it all seem new and exciting? I felt your arms twisting around me.
I know I can't afford to stop for one moment. That it's too soon, too far.
Push the fucking pack off of the porch or break a pound down. Get the scrap if it happen to blow, it makes a round sounds. Pussycat on my lap, push it back and go to town down.
Historians will call them close friends, besties, roommates, colleagues, anything but lovers. History hates lovers, sidekicks, family, good pals, buddies, anything.
Wow, you guys sure have a lot of books about being a lesbian.
Like life's so fun, life's so fun. Got my mini skirt and my rollerblades on. Bag on my side 'cause I'm out till dawn. Keeping it.
Oh look, sapphic books, because Achillean relationships aren't the only queer books worth reading, right?
If you're anything like me, you're probably gay and sad. So here are my top 3 books that I read this year that will probably make you feel even more gay and sad. Swimming in the Dark. It's giving Call Me By Your Name vibes for like the summer part of the book, and then it's just very depressing but beautifully written. The first to die at the end. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's the prequel to They Both Die at the End. Same universe, so you get a call at midnight on the day you're supposed to die. And usually the first part is always better, but this was equally as good, I would say. And finally, When You Call My Name. Not to be confused with Call Me By Your Name, that's a different book. It's set in 1990 in New York in the middle of the AIDS epidemic. It's just heartbreaking, but really, really good. Probably my favorite book this year. What was your favorite book this year?
I forgot about the lesbians.
Well, I didn't.
Excuse me, lesbians coming through!
I don't know if it's cloudy or bright. I only have eyes for the moon may be high, but I can't see a thing in the sky. I only have eyes
I don't think I love you anymore. That gold mine changed you. You don't have to hold me anymore. Our cave's collapsing. I don't wanna be me anymore.
Oh Lord, save me, my drug is my baby. I'll be using for the rest of my life. Don't blame me, love made me crazy. If it doesn't, you ain't doing it right.
Red lips and rosy cheeks. Say you'll see me again, even if it's just in your wildest dreams. Wildest dreams.
Looking for queer boys in your fantasy books? I got you covered.
Achilles, Achilles, come down, won't you get up off the roof. The self is not so weightless, no whole and unbroken. Remember the pact of our youth. Where you go, I'm going. So jumping, I'm jumping, since there is no me without you. So soldier on Achilles. Achilles, come down, won't you get up off the roof?
Three series that you should read instead of Harry Potter. Now this video is not going to go into why we're not supporting JK Rowling, why we're not reading Harry Potter anymore. We already know that, and if you really want, I will link the videos I made on my other channel about it. I also don't want to get into the discussion of separating the art from the artist. That's another video entirely, which I will happily talk about. But this one specifically is about books that you should be recommending buying and reading instead. These are books that I read when I was younger and were just some of my favourite books in the world. One of the series you definitely would know, but I don't feel the other two are spoken about enough, so we're recommending them today. Starting strong, obviously we've got Percy Jackson. It follows our 12-year-old protagonist, similar to Harry Potter, and it is all about mythology. Literally the reason why I love Greek mythology as much as I do. I feel like I don't need to explain this one as much as I do the others, but I am just gonna leave it here. Would highly recommend it for younger readers. And also it has like so many other series, and there's a new one coming out, and the TV show is gonna be amazing, and the movie is the movie. So yeah, if you want this similar coming of age series, Percy Jackson's where it's at. Next is the Land of Stories series by Chris Colfer. You may know him as Kurt from Glee. I only bought this book because it was Chris Colfer and I was a huge fan of Glee when I was a teen, but there is a reason why it's a #1 bestseller. It transports you into this world of fairy tales. This series follows twins Alex and Connor as their grandmother gives them a fairy tale book and they travel into it. Think Once Upon a Time and every Disney movie you'll ever know. It's perfect for the younger readers and it's got that magical feel that you just love. And again, you grow up with the characters with each book you read. I think there are 6 in this series and he's written like spin-offs. I've not personally read them all, but it is comfortable, it's comfort and it's happiness in a book. I also think it's really great for all ages. If you just want to like crawl into your fairy tale fantasy world, this is the series for you. And if you're in the UK, the works always have a deal to get the whole series, so. And finally, my absolute favourite book series as a child, Midnight for Charlie Bone, also known as the Charlie Bone series, also known as Children of the Red Knight. Why is this book not spoken about enough? If I wasn't holding the physical copy, I honestly would believe I made it up. This series follows Charlie Bone, our protagonist, as he realises he can hear pictures and photographs talking. Because of this, he is sent to a boarding school where other children who have this endowment, as it's called, stay, but also people with extreme like musical, artistic or like theatrical talent. From here, Charlie and his group of friends have to fight all the bad guys and use their magic as protection. If you want Harry Potter 2.0 without supporting you-know-who, this one's it. Once again, we witness Charlie grow up with every book. There are 8 books overall in the Charlie Bone series. It's got found family, it's got magic, it's got a boarding school, and the cover is glittery, and it has a pet cafe. It was first published in 2002, and I really believe that more people should be talking about it. So good.
Do you want to do a little bit more non-fiction reading for this Queer History Month challenge? Here are a couple of great ideas to get you started. And most of them check a couple of boxes too, so they'll get you nice and close to those prizes. Want to learn more about Stonewall? The Stonewall Reader is a collection of first-person accounts, diaries, journals, newspaper clippings, phenomenal resource of all people who were on the ground at that time from all different perspectives and angles. The Deviants' War, set in the same time period, is about the process to legalize being gay and working for the government and the ways that that movement was tied in with trans liberation, black liberation, so many different social justice movements coming together in this book. It's a really phenomenal story and a great narrative too. Want to talk memoirs? You should check out Dear Centauron by Akwaeke Emezi, an incredible story of all of their experiences becoming an incredible author, their experiences with gender and sexuality and race. Really beautiful story. Want something that touches on a whole lot of buckets in a short amount of time and is also beautiful? Check out Seeing Gender, which I think there's actually a newer edition of, but it goes from everything as basic to the concept of biological sex to things like the prison industrial complex. An incredible book with beautiful illustrations to boot. If you want to make sure that you are not just learning about white queers and white trans folks, Brown Transfigurations is a little bit more academic of a read, but a really phenomenal account of first-person instances of brown trans bodies, experiences, lives, needs, hopes, dreams. It is a really beautifully written book and a really wide account. And if you want to learn about some people throughout history and across cultures and identities, people who were trans but didn't fall into the label of trans, check out Before We Were Trans. I haven't read it yet, but I am really excited to this month. And of course, I have to close with The Incredible Transgender History by Susan Stryker. Happy reading, everyone.
It is Pride Month and I am proudly bisexual, so here are some books with bisexual representation that I absolutely love. Wild Beauties is a story of a family of women called the No Malvidas who have control over plant life, as well as for reasons that we later find out, are destined to lose their lovers. My favorite part of this is the intimate discussion of bisexuality and the different representations of bisexuality that are in the story. Bitter is the prequel story to Pet, and this story is about Jam's parents, where they're both kind of bisexual or pansexual. I am not fully clear, but what it is clear is that this is a story about queerness as a rebellious act, and specifically about what it means to feel and be safe. Forget This Ever Happened is a newly found 5-star of mine. It is an extremely weird story with talking reptiles and time-traveling aliens, but at the center of it is a coming-of-age story of realizing that, oh my god, I might have a crush on my best friend. Am I bisexual? Certain Dark Things is a black noir aesthetic vampire story that takes place in the Ciudad de Mexico, in which our main character, a vampire, is a bisexual woman, just seamlessly bisexual, and it is just one of the coolest representations of vampires I've read in a while, and it is so fun. I cannot even recommend this enough. Black Sun is not only one of the best fantasy books you'll ever read based on Mesoamerican folklore, it is also seamlessly queer, and one of the main characters is this bisexual siren who's a little bit of a train wreck, and I absolutely love her. This list doesn't even cover all of my favorite books, but make sure that you share yours in the comments below.
Today we're going to be talking about some recommendations for LGBTQ History Month, which is October, and it is also the month of National Coming Out Day, which is October 11th. First, we have The Stonewall Reader. This is an anthology that chronicles the fight for queer rights in the 1960s, and the items inside are drawn from the New York Public Library's archive collection, which is pretty cool. This book was issued in 2019 to coincide with the anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising, and it's gone through multiple printings since then. I've actually seen a few people talking about this book earlier this year, so I was excited to receive a copy from Penguin. Something I really like about this book is that even though it is a paperback, it has a dust jacket, so this actually comes off, and then this is what the actual book looks like. So I like that it was designed that way. So if you're interested in a shorter read about queer history, here's one. Next, we have Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments. This is intimate histories of riotous black girls, troublesome women, and queer radicals. The subtitle's a little long, so I can never remember it. But this focuses on intimate life of black women in Philadelphia and New York in the 20th century. This is Black on Both Sides, A Racial History of Trans Identity. This is a book that follows the intersections of racial and transgender identities from slavery until current times and looks at how the definitions of gender are often racialized. Queer Screams, which is a history of queer survival in American horror movies, and it really focuses on the implicit and explicit representation of queer identities in horror films and how the genre often intersects with queerness. Queer Between the Covers. This is a book that focuses on queer voices in publishing from the 1800s until today, and it discusses how often in times and places where queer individuals were not allowed to really express themselves in public, that literature and publications became a way to do that. Black Like Us. This is an anthology of black queer voices from 1898 all the way to 2000. I've not read every story in this anthology yet, and one thing that I like about it is that they break down the different inclusions by the time period that they're in, so you can look for things that are focused in various subjects or during a certain time. Indecent Advances, A Hidden History of True Crime and Prejudice Before Stonewall. This book looks at the discrimination and criminalization of queerness from World War I until the Stonewall era, and also obviously looks at true crime events as well as large events in society.
Dear Book Rex, you've come to the right place. I'd be amiss not to mention my own book, A Tempest of Emerald Dream. This has a pan main character who's also ace, two gay best friends who kiss. There's also a short story about that. Bloodlight Magic is a witch who has to either kill her first love or lose her family's magic forever. Trans character. Ledgers and Lattes, a lesbian orc warrior decides to settle down and open a coffee shop. I Am Widow, a poly couple triple who fight in mechas. The First Sister, an epic queer fantasy with lesbians and non-binary vigilantes. This is a given, but Priory, dragons and lesbians. For gay, spicy things, Ben Alderson's books are great, Lord of Eternal Night and Betrayal Storms, but also he's got a YA book called The Lost Mage, which is superb. Gay dragon, no, the people who are riding the dragons are gay. The dragons may be gay, I'm not sure. Fae, warriors, witch hunters, lesbians, The Rogue Crown, A.K. Milford. I Kiss Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston, I think it's their best book. This made me think a lot about myself, and gender is phenomenal. Cemetery Boys, a trans guy and a gay ghost. They may kiss. Hell Follow With Us, there's trans characters, gay characters, lesbian characters, people who use neo-pronouns, there's everything. This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fae, lesbians, bi people, plant magic. Yay, bye!
Queer books that don't look queer. It says Kiss the Prince. Obviously it's straight, and it's a Sleeping Beauty retelling, and we've all seen Sleeping Beauty. It's straight. This girl sees people breaking into school and she's like, well, not my problem to fix. And that's all there is to this book. There are a million Cinderella retellings out there, and is any of them gay? No. So why would this be the exception? Like, it's obviously not gonna be sapphic. And then we have the Chandler Legacies, a friend group at a boarding school. And it's not a Mulan sapphic retelling. It's absolutely not. This is clearly a straight high school romance based on Grease. It's a Grease retelling, but not a queer Grease retelling. And the author also never writes queer books, like only straight books. So
science fiction is one of my favorite book genres, but I don't think it gets enough attention. So I just thought I would share some of my favorite queer sci-fi books to get you started. I'm just gonna begin with a favorite of mine, that is This Is How You Lose the Town War. It is sapphic, it is time traveling, it is enemies to lovers, and it is falling in love by writing letters to each other. It's so good. Generally one of my favorite books I've read this year. It is about a transgender violinist trying to find her place in the world. It has refugee aliens that own a donut shop. It is quirky, it is heartbreaking, it is very fun. I wouldn't be without including any Star Wars book. Dr. Aphra is a lesbian main character who makes a deal with Darth Vader and quickly finds out that she cannot manipulate him as easily as she thought she could. A book that genuinely surprised me, and that is The Darkness Outside of Us. It's about two men who are naturally enemies but actually have to work together to find out the dark truth of the situation that they're in and maybe fall in love. A Memory Called Empire is one of my favorite sci-fi books of all time, and it's not only sapphic, but it is also a brilliant look into colonialism and what it means to be someone that loves your colonizer but also wants to be loyal to your own people. To Be Taught and Fortunate, it is a short novella about space exploration and how this changes human beings. If you've been on Book Talk, you already know this one. It's Gideon the Ninth. It is lesbian necromancers, and everybody talks about how confusing it is, but no one talks about how heartbreaking it is. If you're interested in these books and want to read more queer science fiction book, then maybe join my favorite book club that's going to start next week, and we're going to be reading A Psalm of a Wild Build by Becky Chambers, and it's going to be all queer, all sci-fi, all the time, and I cannot wait.
Queer books by queer authors to read during Pride Month or any other month of the year that are not the same 5 Book Talk recommendations. This video will have contemporary romance recommendations, horror recommendations, fantasy recommendations, and mermaid romance recommendations, because I had a couple of those. And every single genre will have a Killian, sapphic, and trans recommendations, except for horror, because I only have sapphic horror books. I don't know what happened there. I apparently just read sapphic romance horror. Both. So starting off with the contemporary romances. So these are the people that really like Casey McQuiston, who like Emily Henry but wish it was gay. My number one, if you want like Emily Henry but make it gay, is The Gay Best Friend by Nicholas D. D'Amenzio. I can't explain this more. This is Emily Henry but make it gay. Another Achillean recommendation for contemporary romance is I'm So Not Over You by Kosuko Jackson. This is a second chance fake dating, so like ex-boyfriends have to get together and pretend to fake date again. So that's fun. And then The Prospect by K.T. Hoffman. This is a trans romance as well. It is a baseball romance and it features the first professional trans baseball player. And like it's rivals to lovers as well. For sapphic contemporary romance, Fall Hard by Jade Church is a very cute story about the main character who's in love with her best friend and her roommate who does not love her back. And so she enlists the help of her friend Bryn to help her fall out of love. And then they fall in love. It's very cute. And then Catch and Cradle by Katya Rose. This is a college lacrosse romance, a little bit opposites attract, with a very like serious captain who's like no dating other players on the team, and the new walk-on who is not taking life as quite as seriously, but very, very fun. That one's a lot of fun. And then for another trans romance, Chef's Choice by TJ Alexander. This is a T for T fake dating with cooking. So you can't really go wrong with anything there. For queer horror thriller vibes, definitely go for Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. This is conversion camp horror. It's a lot of fun. It reads basically like a Scream movie. It's a hoot. I highly recommend, especially if you love that kind of genre of horror in movies. I don't know why it hasn't been made into a movie yet. It's a lot of fun. Rainbow Black by Maggie Thrash is a queer horror murder mystery love story that spans like 20 years and focuses around like the 90s satanic panic. It's really interesting, really fun. I highly recommend. Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield is about a girl who her wife comes back after this like deep sea disaster and something's different. Something's wrong. And so it's less horror but like a creeping something is very, very wrong. And so all of these are sapphic. I don't know why. If you have any Achillean or trans horror recommendations, I would love to hear them. I don't know why. I'm just apparently drawn to sapphic horror. For Achillean high fantasy, I would recommend Dark Moon Shallow Sea by David R. Sladen, who is the author of White Trash Warlock, which is an urban fantasy. This is it's gods and pirates and knights and two characters who are fated to be on opposite sides. It is a sprawling world, and like if you like I love gods like messing around in my fantasy, so if you like that, I think you will like this as well. Peter Darling by Austin Chant is a Peter Pan retelling. It is a trans Peter Pan retelling between Peter Pan and Captain Hook, and this is hailed as one of the best trans romances out there. I have actually not read this one personally yet, but I need to read it. I'll probably read it this month. It is supposed to be just beautiful. For sapphic fantasy, The Silver Birds by Apolline Lucy. This is very unique. It's very mysterious. It has a very interesting setting and like world building. Have not seen a lot of people read it. It is enemies to lovers. It's a little bit dark. It's a little bit eerie. I highly recommend it. Check it out. Not a lot of people have checked it out, but I highly recommend it. And last but not least, mermaid romance. And mermaid being used as a gender neutral term here. I guess this first one technically isn't really a mermaid romance, but it's like a fish romance. So, fish monster, it's fine. Providence Girls by Morgan Dante. This is a story told through letters about a girl turning into a fish monster. And two girls getting it on. It's a sapphic romance. Gothic. It kind of reads like more like literary fiction, but it's a romance. I recommend. I believe it's on Kindle Unlimited. Adonis by Elle Charlene. This is a actual like merman romance. It's an Achillean romance. And this is one of my favorites that I read this year. It's about this kid he's down on his luck. No one loves him, really. He doesn't think anyone loves him. And he's been accused of a hate crime that he didn't commit, and nothing in his life is making sense, and then he meets a merman. And that stuff starts making even less sense. But the merman's really hot. So there you go. I really enjoyed that one. And for trans merman romance, we have A Bone in His Teeth by Kellen Graves. This is a brand new release, so I have not actually picked this one up yet. I think it only came out 2 weeks ago, but has this beautiful cover, and it is between a trans man and a mermaid who kind of kidnaps him. And it's supposed to have like horror elements. It looks wonderful. Kellen Graves has written a couple like Fae series, so I am very excited to check this one out. This one is at the top of my list. Yeah, so read queer books all year long. But if you were looking for a place to start with Pride Month, I really highly recommend checking all of these books out.
Not all queer books are created equally, so here are some popular queer books and whether I would recommend them or not. Pet and Bitter are absolutely worth reading. They're actually works of art that if you have not read them right now, I am going to be heavily disappointed. Delilah Green Doesn't Care, and I do not care about Delilah Green. I had such a hard time getting into the story. I actually have no interest in reading the other two. I really dislike Delilah. It did not work for me now. Diary of the Orange Tree is a book that I highly recommend, but it's not a must-read story. Like, I really enjoy some elements of it. It has dragons, it is sapphic, but I do think it drags along sometimes, and so I highly recommend it, but I wouldn't say it's a must read. There's not much I can say about Songs of Achilles except for it's worth the hype. It destroyed me emotionally. I could not recover it. I loved it. And the 9th is Lesbian Necromancers, and this is worth the hype. Every hype that you have heard about it is worth, and it is just as confusing as you think it will be, but it is so good and so worth it. Here's the thing about Cemetery Boys. This is a book that I believe that every young person should read, but when I read it, I feel like I was a little bit too old to be reading it. I was definitely not the target audience, and that is okay. Red, White, and Royal Blue. Look, yeah, it's fun. Is it the greatest rom-com you'll ever read? No. Is it the greatest book you'll ever read? No. But it is so freaking fun and adorable. I can't help but say highly recommend. It's really fun.
Do you like reading classics? Do you like reading queer books? If so, then you're in luck, because here are my top 3 favorite classic novels that are also queer in one way or another. Number 3 is Carmilla, which is kind of infamously the lesbian vampire novel because it's one of the very first vampire novels, but originally the horror was supposed to come from a young woman falling in love with and kind of being seduced by another woman who was also a vampire. Number 2 is The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is full of decadence and decay and amoral characters, and I particularly really like the Penguin Classics edition because it has lots of notes on where Oscar Wilde had to edit his text to make it less explicitly gay. Number 1 is Morris, the coming-of-age story of a young man in England who realizes that he's gay at a time when that was illegal, and it was written by E.M. Forster, who himself was queer, and what's important about it is that it has a happy ending where 2 characters end up in love together, but because of that, it wasn't published until the 70s, even though it was written in 1917.
When does the line cross from reading diversely to fetishization when it comes to exclusively reading MLM books? In my opinion, there is a couple of factors. Number 1, exclusively reading MLM. Let's break this portion down though, because people do have reading preferences and specialize within certain genres. They only read gay books. There's little to no attention given to anything else underneath the Achillean umbrella. Now, Achillean encompasses gay, bi, pan, non-women who love non-women, meaning anyone who falls underneath the mask umbrella, trans and cis men, demi-men, non-binary people, etc. I identify as bi, trans, masc, non-binary, which means that I fall underneath the Achillean umbrella. When it comes to fetishization, we will often see people reading only cis gay books. Now, number 2, they don't read diversely within the MLM genre. There are no MLM fantasy books. There are no MLM sci-fi books. There are no MLM literary fiction books. There are no MLM horror books. You get my drift. They are often spicy MLM romance books. And there's usually a dash of white supremacy included, because the majority of these books exclusively feature white cis gay men. Number 3, the majority of the MLM books on the shelves are written by cis, straight, white women. Number 4, performative allyship. Their allyship begins and ends in the consumption of MLM books and does not extend to any other identity in the LGBTQIA+ community. If you do see their advocacy, it is usually inappropriately hyper-focused on their gay boys. Number 5, the mistreatment of queer men in real life. They want a gay best friend. They want to go to exclusively gay bars. They want to see 2 pretty men kissing. God forbid if they're bears, though. And trans men definitely don't count. And the rare occasions where they do, it is only a cute little femboy. And number 6, certain phrases. calling the MLM books that they read illegal or sinful, or that they're so bad for reading this, paired with certain phrasing directed towards other books, predominantly sapphic books, because the fetishization of MLM books often correlates with the demonization of sapphic books, calling them disgusting or not as interesting, or that they would have enjoyed the same exact book if it were only two boys kissing instead of two girls kissing. That is actually a situation that happened on Book Talk a year or two ago. All of these factors together usually give a pretty clear indicator that fetishization is happening. Can someone be ignorant that they're engaging with fetishizing behavior? Absolutely. It doesn't negate the harm perpetuated, though. And it doesn't mean that they can't be better. Accountability isn't a bad thing. It's an opportunity for growth.
Hi, I'm Abisha, I'm a lesbian, and I wrote an inclusive LGBTQ+ children's book. It's called Cassie the Curious Cat, and I'm going to read it to you now. Cassie is a very curious cat. There seems to be mischief wherever she's at. She's very nosy and loves to peek and see what people she can meet. She's very friendly and loves to say hi to people she meets and passes by, but her favourite thing, and better still, is to peer through her neighbours' windowsills. She starts off her day at number 1, which is home to Jenny, Jonah and John. Jenny's the mum and John is the dad, and Jonah's the baby that they just had. They seem a little overwhelmed, and Cassie can smell a funny smell. They're running around and looking all flappy. It seems they're looking for a missing nappy. They spot Cassie upon the sill and notice she bought them a daffodil. Why, thank you, Cassie, now toodaloo, and off she trots to number 2. Number 2 is full of joy. There's 7 girls and just 1 boy. Laura is married to Lucy, and together they have 5 girls plus Brucey. They're always laughing and having fun, or running around outside in the sun. When they see Cassie, they sneak her a treat. Then off she trots to number 3. Full of glee is number 3. It's home to Maya and her mummy. Although it's just the 2 of them, they're as happy as they come. Cassie often sees them making cakes, because Maya really loves to bake. They also love movies and snuggles, and juggling, and blowing bubbles. Number 4 is Oh So Quiet. It's home to Ted, Tom, and Tobias. Tobias loves his doting dads, and for him, they're very glad. They read to him and make him laugh, and run him nice warm bubble baths. Cassie gives a loving wave, and then jumps down and on her way. Her final stop is number 5. It's getting late, and she's feeling tired. Maggie is putting Charlie to bed. Charlie's not a boy nor a girl, but non-binary instead. Charlie is reading a bedtime story. They look up at the window and say, "Cassie saw me." Charlie and Cassie love to play, so they say, "Meet me outside tomorrow day." Cassie waves her tail and says, "Good night all," and back to her home at number 6 she crawls. "Where have you been?" asked Holly and Zorro. "Just seeing the world, and I'll do it all again tomorrow."
Book recommendations to read this Pride Month or any time of year. This is not an exhaustive list, so if you have any book suggestions or book recommendations that I should be reading this month or that you want to share with everyone, let me know. This book made me so happy. It's full of so much queer love and joy, and I think that's really important, so I wanted to start off the list that way. It's called Greta and Valden by Rebecca K. Riley. It's about 2 queer Maori Russian siblings living in New Zealand, kind of just figuring out life. They're in their late 20s and they're not really sure where they're going. But what's really special about this is the love between their family. And I think that's something that I really want to promote this month. So I really loved this book and I encourage you to go pick it up. I feel like I can't sing this book's praises enough. It's called My Government Means to Me by Rashid Newson. And it takes place in the 80s in New York. And we follow Trey as he gets involved in a lot of things, not always on purpose. He organizes a rent strike, he gets involved in the ACT UP movement, and he meets some queer civil rights leaders along the way, like Bayard Rustin. So this book is really excellent, and I think everyone should pick it up. Okay, this next book made me weep openly in public, so if you're looking to have people be concerned about you and cause a scene, you should read Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart. This book is incredible. It's a story about a Protestant and a Catholic, and they fall in love. They're from 2 working class families in Glasgow, and it's just so devastatingly heartbreaking, but it's also really beautiful. and there's elements of familial love and familial trauma, and it's such a classic, and I really recommend this one. Talked about this next book before, but it's always going to be something I recommend. It's called Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. It's a story about a man named David who's an expat living in Paris, and on a night he goes to a bar and he meets a man named Giovanni, and they start a love affair. It's really devastating and wonderful. Pops up on a lot of people's lists because it's worth it, and I think you should read it. This next book gives off a cozy vibe, but who says you can't be cozy year-round? It's called Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, and it's a story about an orc who's sick of being a warrior, and she's like, I just want to start a coffee shop. So that's what she does, and she sort of starts to fall in love with one of her baristas. It's really sweet. There's some conflict, but it's not too heavy, and it's a really happy, feel-good book. And there's actually a second one called Bookshops and Bone Dusts. That's a prequel, and I've read that as well, and I recommend it as well. I read this next book, but I feel really comfortable recommending it because I think I'm going to love it, and I think you're going to love it too. It's called Housemates by Emma Copley Eisenberg. It's a story about two roommates who decide to go on a road trip to learn about life and document America through photographs and writing. It seems really sweet and wonderful, and it seems like it's about chasing your own dreams and finding what fulfills you, and it's just a story of love and joy and happiness and discovering yourself, and I think I can highly recommend this one even though I haven't read it yet. Next book's super short. It's called Boulder by Eva Balthazar, and I think it sounds really interesting. It's about two women, and they're in their 40s, and one decides she wants to have a kid and the other isn't so sure. So it's about deciding where your priorities lie in life, and I think it's a really interesting concept, and I'm really excited to read this one. I've been waiting for this next book to get translated into English. It's called Valid by Chris Bergeron, and it's a story about a trans woman in the year 2050, and she has to hide her true self in order to be safe with this AI overlord, and she decides to mount a revolution by showing her truest self. This sounds so interesting and a really unique take on the sci-fi genre, and I'm really excited to get into this one. Excited to read Blackouts by Justin Torres. I've had it for a few months and I've been waiting to read it, and it just sounds fascinating. It's a story about a person who's helping someone as they're ill, and they recount lost histories and stories, and I feel like this just sounds like such an interesting read, so I'm eager to get into it and let you all know what I think. Next up we have Henry Henry, which is by Alan Bratton, and it's a queer retelling of Shakespeare's Henriette. I always think retelling of Shakespeare stories can be really interesting, so I'm excited to see where this one goes. It's contemporary, it takes place in the 21st century, and I think it could be really interesting and a really fun read. Those are my book recommendations. Let me know what you're reading this month.